Question is that the motion be agreed to. The Honourable Ruth Dyson.
Mr Speaker, can I just begin my comments by saying to the Honourable Tony Rowell that actually this is not about politics. This is about the quality of the policy decisions that have been made in relation to a matter that, as the Minister quite rightly said, has been live as a topic of debate for 20 years, 11 of which have been under a national-led government of one form or another. So it's a bit rich for the Minister to say that the Labour government did nothing, when this is now his 11th year of having this matter on his plate. This should be an issue where a lot of discussion is had between the parties, the many parties that make up this Parliament, with carers in the community, with family members who are affected by this policy, to see if we've got it right. Because this policy is not straightforward. It is a determination by this Parliament of the caring responsibilities that should naturally go with a family, and where the threshold is reached that caring should be paid for out of taxpayer money. And that's not always an easy call. The determination that the Minister has made is that a very high threshold of need has to be met before a family is entitled to be paid, and I don't understand why that threshold would be at all relevant. If it's a matter of rationing the money, then the Minister should be upfront and say that. If it's because he genuinely believes that parents who look after their adult disabled daughter or son are not entitled to be paid for that because they don't have much of a need, then I think he's wrong. I think that in terms of a public policy position is absolutely wrong. But the worst thing, Mr Speaker, is that this Parliament is debating this legislation through all stages under urgency without any opportunity for us to hear from the families who are affected. These are families who took their personal lives to public exposure through the Human Rights Commission, to the High Court and then to the Court of Appeal. They deserve better respect than this rushed legislation is giving them, in my view. I don't think it would be much of an effort to have even a shortened period of consideration under the Select Committee. The reason that the Minister wants us to go through all stages under urgency without any member of the public having an opportunity to have a say is because this bill extinguishes the right of family members who will not be allowed to be paid under this family caregiver policy, will not meet the criteria. It extinguishes their right to go to the Human Rights Commission and have a case against the government heard. And I think extinguishing rights is not something that this Parliament should do at any stage, let alone ramming it through under all stages under urgency. It's wrong to do that to family members who just want their work supporting their disabled son or daughter or husband or wife or parent recognised. Mr Speaker, I don't understand why the Minister decided, instead of explaining to the members of Parliament who are so interested in this legislation, instead of explaining the rationale behind this public policy, behind extinguishing the rights of those families who are excluded, decided to spend the whole of his time attacking the former government. How is that going to progress thinking and rigour in this debate, which affects so many families who frankly deserve better? They deserve better consideration and they deserve respect. They're certainly not getting it from the National Party. Mr Speaker, there will be time in the committee stages of this House, I know, for amendment and questions of the Minister, and I hope he answers them, because it's going to be the only time that we have to have any questions addressed. In his first reading speech, I thought I heard the Minister specifically exclude spouses from the consideration of being paid as a family caregiver, and I think that's wrong. I don't think that this Parliament should determine who in a family provides care for someone, for one of their own family members. I think that's a determination that should be made by a family. Why should I, as a parliamentarian, or Tony Ryle, or any one of the National Party, say no, this is wrong? We won't be paying you as a husband or wife, but we would pay you as a son or daughter or parent. Why would it be our determination to have that payment? But yet in the report of the Attorney-General, which actually has got nothing blanked out, so I would recommend it to colleagues to read, it specifically includes a spouse as being a family member under this legislation. So that point is actually quite important, Mr Speaker, and I'm confused as to the reason that the Minister said the spouse was excluded, and yet the Attorney-General, the Honourable Chris Finlayson, has clearly included a spouse in his report on this legislation. Mr Speaker, I just want to move briefly to the regulatory impact statement. This is an opportunity for all members of Parliament to have independent consideration of the impact of this legislation. And normally it's a pretty robust process. I've seen some regulatory impact statements that are a bit weak, but this one looked like it had a lot of pages, so I got quite excited. I thought we're going to have a very good analysis of this legislation. And looking through it, Mr Speaker, I have never ever seen a RIS like this before. Look at this, Mr Speaker. Blanked out, legally privileged. And on the next page, the whole page of the regulatory impact statement blanked out. How are we to judge the quality of this legislation based on a RIS when the whole of this page is blanked out? On the next page, contents of this column, legally privileged and blanked out. Page after page after page, blanked out information. This is the information that Parliament is entitled to have so that we can have a proper, robust debate based on facts. And what we've got is a RIS that has page after page after page, another whole page. No wonder the Honourable Tim Grosser is hanging his head in shame. We would never see that Minister bring a regulatory impact statement to this House with page after page after page blanked out. We're not able to have a robust debate. It goes through the entire document. Through the entire document, page after page, blanked out, legally privileged. This is the Parliament that makes the law of our land, not some bureaucrat based in a department down the road blanking out information that we should be entitled to have. How do we know about the robustness of this legislation if we're not even entitled in this Parliament to have the information and therefore have a proper debate? Mr Speaker, this is one of the most important issues in the disability sector, and as the Minister quite properly said, it's been a live debate for over 2 decades. A number of family members took this case to a Human Rights Tribunal hearing. It later went to the High Court and then to the Court of Appeal. I was very pleased when the Minister of Health decided not to take it further but to call it quits. I thought the Minister of Health would then work with other parties and would work with Carers New Zealand and come back to this Parliament with a robust, agreed, sensible decision. When the options that have been considered by the Minister are looked at, which are contained in the RIS, in one of the few pages where it's not blanked out, this whole issue could have been addressed. 5,400 family members, family carers of disabled people, this could have been totally addressed for a midpoint cost of an estimated $65 million a year. That's actually not a lot of money in the scheme of things. The Minister has boasted that he has addressed it for $92 million over 4 years. That's only $23 million a year. Mr Speaker, I think that the family members who are excluded from this because they don't meet the very, very high threshold that the Minister has imposed, I think those families deserve better. In my view, they should have been considered in this payment, and they certainly should not have had their rights to take a case of discrimination to the Human Rights Tribunal extinguished by this legislation.
Call Dr. Paul Hutchison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, it's a privilege to be speaking on